today let's talk about another one of my favorite directors, Tim Burton. This is a guy who is heavily influenced by German Expressionism. For those of you who don't know, German Expressionism is a style of German cinema that is mostly prevalent in horror films in the 1920s, 30s, 40s. Nosferatu is a great example of that, and these films usually rely more on the visuals than on the dialogue. So usually the visuals are over exaggerated, they do not look realistic at all. They are the polar opposite of naturalism, and they are meant to be over exaggerated because they are meant to show you a certain mood and tone, and the movie tells you the mood through the style of the visuals. That's mostly how German Expressionism is, very bold and striking visuals. So let's talk about Tim Burton's films. I have a lot of films to go through today, easily like 15 movies. So I'm not gonna spend an hour on a single movie. Okay, let's start with Mars Attacks, and I'm gonna give a rating to all of these movies as well. Mars Attacks is Tim Burton's love letter to 1950s science fiction films with all of its campy glory. If you love 1950s science fiction films, you know they are campy by nature, and there's a lot of very cheesy scenes, a lot of very campy humor, and if you get it, you get it. If you don't get it, then you don't get it. There's really no other way to explain this movie. That's why this movie doesn't get really good reviews when it first released. I think it's even rotten when it first released on Rotten Tomatoes. So Mars Attacks gets an 8 out of 10 from me. Edward's Scissorhands. This is my favorite Tim Burton film, and one of the reasons why it's my favorite is because I feel it's very personal. And the themes of this misunderstood outcast that is shunned by society, and this nobody understands him, and this type of story I think is very personal to Tim Burton because of the kind of stories that he likes to tell. This is a theme that keeps repeating itself in a lot of his movies. But I think Edward Scissorhands is the best representation of this theme and this type of character. And the character of Edward Scissorhands is a really interesting character that is very easy to identify and relate to. And his character is also played wonderfully by Johnny Depp in an unusually restrained and quiet performance. You don't usually get this type of stuff from Johnny Depp.
The best kind of prize is a surprise.
As well as the very emotionally impactful story by Tim Burton. You don't get a lot of those from Tim Burton. He's not a very emotional director, so you have to appreciate one every time you get one. The next film, alright, I didn't give my rating. 10 out of 10, easily. The next movie, Big Fish. Big Fish is a film that Tim Burton adapted from a book. That's why the script wasn't written by him. He doesn't really have a say in the script. I think he has it, but it doesn't feel like a Tim Burton movie, and it doesn't look like a Tim Burton movie either. This is one of Tim Burton's films that doesn't feel like a Tim Burton film. There are still one or two moments when you could tell this is a Tim Burton thing, like a fantasy thing, Danny DeVito being this circus owner. Yeah, that's a very Tim Burton thing. He likes to place Danny DeVito in circuses. But mostly this is a very non-Tim Burton-esque film, and that doesn't really work for me sometimes, because sometimes it could feel a little bit generic. It could feel like any other person could have made this film, but still it's a pretty solid movie. It's just not very Tim Burton, and it's just not very stylish. So I'm still gonna give it a 7 out of 10. It's definitely one of Tim Burton's more emotional films because he did not write it. The next film, Big Eyes. Big Eyes is Tim Burton attempting something a little bit different, a more real life story. This is a story that's based on true events that happened, and these characters are based on real people. And Amy Adams and Christoph Waltz give out really good performances in this movie. Especially Christoph Waltz really needs a really good director who understands him, because I feel more often than not Christoph Waltz actually give out really misguided performances. But when he is under the hands of a good director, you really see that he is a good actor. He just needs a director who understands his style. Amy Adams is really good in this film as well, one of my favorite actresses. Big Eyes is, I think, a very interesting experiment that is worth watching, and I may not like it as some of Tim Burton's more fantasy works, but it is a worthy experiment, so it still gets 8.5 out of 10. I still think it's good. Batman. Batman is the classic film. Everybody loves Batman. What should I say about this movie? The world building and everything, the characters and the tone of the film pretty much influenced the way people viewed Batman ever since the 1980s. Ever since the 1980s, Batman has always been this really dark and brooding and very moody emo character, and that's all because of Tim Burton. Before Tim Burton, Batman was this really playful and happy character until Tim Burton turned him into this dark guy that he still is now. So Batman, 9 out of 10. Batman Returns, a slightly less interesting version of Batman, but it's still good. It's just there are a few problems, mainly the tone. The tone of this movie is really weird. It can go from being really serious in one moment to being just really playful in another moment, and it doesn't always work. More often than not, it doesn't, and it's very jarring to see something like that happen this frequently in the film. And it's also crowded with too many villains, and Christopher Walken in this movie is just very over the top, but also not really over the top. It's very hard to describe it. It's just it doesn't fit well in the movie. Christopher Walken's performance feels very out of place here. It's a 7.5 out of 10. Still a good Batman sequel though. Frankenweenie. This is a film that Tim Burton made based on his own short film that he did very early on in his career. So it's like his career coming full circle. Now he's making a movie based on a short film that he did early on. So but Frankenweenie is very personal in that way. It's very much Tim Burton's story. He created this story and this world and these characters. It's all original, and I like it. I think Tim Burton maybe should do more original stuff, because I really like his original stuff, and Frankenweenie is like that. It's also a very emotional movie as well. And like I said, these movies are very rare coming from Tim Burton. And Frankenweenie does have a very touching and moving central relationship between a boy and a dog. And pretty much every little thing in this movie feels very Burton-esque. If I had to show you a movie to explain to you what Tim Burton's style is, I would just show you Frankenweenie. This is easily one of his most stylish films, and I like it very much. It's a 9 out of 10 for me. Next up, Dumbo, the Disney remake. Dumbo, the original animated film, didn't have much of a story, so they have to stretch it out to 2 hours, and that's why this movie has very weak characters and just a very weak story and narrative. A lot of things about this movie just suffer because the original film, the animated film, just didn't have much to begin with. It's just a story about an elephant with flying ears, and they have to stretch it out to 2 hours, and that's the biggest problem here. It's not really good. 4.5 out of 10. The Nightmare Before Christmas. This wasn't directed by Tim Burton, it was directed by Henry Selick, but it still feels like a Burton-esque film. But it isn't as stylish or I think as outstanding as some of Tim Burton's films are. This film still feels very Disney at times. It feels watered down a little bit because, you know, Disney. But it's a great entry point for people who aren't familiar with Tim Burton. It's a great entry point. It's a great first film. But it isn't his best film. It's far from it. But everyone needs an introduction, and this film could be a great introduction. And it also has a great music by Danny Elfman as well to accompany it. The Nightmare Before Christmas, to me, it's like a 7 out of 10. Corpse Bride. This is a great film. with great aesthetics. The aesthetics of this film are very special, and I think even among other Tim Burton movies, this film still stands out. It has some of the best character designs I have seen in any movie ever, and just everything about this movie looks so weird. Everything doesn't look normal in this movie, and we also get to see Tim Burton's version of hell, which is just a very beautiful thing that every man should see. And it's a very dark romantic fantasy, and it's very unique, I think, in a lot of ways. And just visually, it's one of the most visually striking movies ever. The story may not be much, but it works. At least it's functional and it doesn't get in the way of the movie. Corpse Bride is a 9 out of 10 to me, just purely for the visuals alone are already worth the ticket price. Next up, Alice in Wonderland. This is based off the Lewis Carroll book, and the book is abstract and very nonsensical in nature, which gives Tim Burton a lot of space to work with, which is very different from Dumbo. Because this book by Lewis Carroll doesn't really have much of a story either. It's just one character with the name of Alice going from one place to another place to another place, and that's pretty much the whole book. But I think Tim Burton does manage to somehow squeeze out a story from this very abstract source material, and I think the story could have been better, a little bit better, but based on what he was adapting from, it's already pretty good, I think. But it's mainly just the world, it's not so much the story, it's mainly the world and all of these different characters. Maybe some of these characters need a little bit more time and a little bit more writing to maybe flesh them out a little better. So this movie could have been better, but it's definitely not bad. Alice in Wonderland is an 8 out of 10 for me. Next up, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This is the same case as Alice in Wonderland, also adapted from a book. But the problem here is it's adapted from a Roald Dahl book, and Roald Dahl's writing is very specific. It has a very specific tone. And Tim Burton's direction in films also have a very specific tone. And these two specific tones do not work well at all. They clash with one another, and that's why this movie doesn't even work. Because Tim Burton's style just doesn't work with Roald Dahl's style. Both of them are way too stylish to be in a film together without compromising either one or the other. And in this film, also another big problem is the fact that it doesn't have to exist in the first place. Even its existence is a problem, because we already have Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and that's a very good adaptation of the book. So I don't really know why we need another one of these. It's just not a very good adaptation. It's just way too creepy, and not in a good way. Not like in Alice in Wonderland. The creepiness in this film is not good. It feels out of place. And Johnny Depp's really weird in this movie too. This is like a 6 out of 10 for me. Sleepy Hollow. This movie feels like a theme park ride in a lot of ways, because you enter this mysterious abandoned town. It's not exactly abandoned, but it's like a ghost town in a lot of ways. And you see a lot of these inhabitants in the town, and you see the set design, you see the costume design, and that's what this movie is. It's like a theme park ride, and it's not necessarily about the filmmaking side of it. It's very much a movie that's built on the experience of watching it. But judging by that, I think this is a very good experience, so I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. It's definitely a very unique experience, but just don't hope for anything more than that. Dark Shadows, another one of Tim Burton's collaborations with Johnny Depp. Like, how many collaborations do they have? Like 30? 50? Dark Shadows is actually not that bad. I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. I think this is their last film together. It's not as action heavy, it's not as exciting, it's not as creative, but it's still a very solid movie. Still has great pieces of drama from here and there, still a lot of style, and Johnny Depp is still really good in this movie. Tim Burton is still really good in this movie. it's not them at their top form, but it's still not a bad movie either. So I think it's still a pretty good movie. Still a 7 out of 10. Okay, we're nearing the end here. Next up is Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice is a very imaginative movie, and some of the most imaginative and weird visuals to ever come out of a movie from that time, with very unique architecture as well as very unique art direction. But Beetlejuice is also sometimes a little bit too dependent on the visuals. The story does go on a little bit longer than it should, but it's a very small problem compared to what you're getting out from this movie. So it's still an 8 out of 10. Probably not an 8, it's a little bit too high. Probably a 7.5 out of 10 for Beetlejuice. Okay, next up, Ed Wood. Ed Wood is a film about the filmmaker called Ed Wood. This is a real director, a real person who is often considered to be one of the worst directors of all time. And now Tim Burton has made a movie about his life and his career. And this is actually a great chance for Tim Burton to show a different side of him that isn't about fantasy. This is about a real life, a real person. But Ed Wood in a lot of ways is also very similar to Tim Burton's characters. It's also misunderstood by society, and he's also kind of an outcast and a misfit in this movie, and he finds a different misfits, and together they try to make a movie. And of course nobody likes this movie because it's made by a bunch of misfits and they have very different sensibilities. But it's a very endearing film, and it's a very inspiring film for filmmakers to watch, because it shows the passion of making a movie. Even though everyone says your movie is bad, even though the studios don't want to fund your movie, the critics are bombing on your movie, still Ed Wood still went ahead and made his movies. He did not have the skills to make a movie, but he had the passion and he still made it anyway, and that's what's so inspiring about this movie. And it's a very good movie, I think. It's 8 out of 10. Okay, next up, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. This is a film about Pee-wee Herman, the character played by Paul Rubens. He pretty much played this character for his whole life. This character is synonymous with his name, and this is a very childlike movie. Sometimes it veers a little bit into childishness, but that is not a negative. Okay, a movie can be childish but also be good, and that is the case with Pee-wee's Big Adventure. This is a movie that is childish, but it's also pretty good. But you have to understand it's a very childlike movie. But what I like the most about it is that childlike sense of adventure and discovery, and that feeling that the world outside is big and there's endless possibilities out there. But the story is really just an excuse for Pee-wee to go from one place to another. So don't expect much from this movie in terms of story or any sort of maturity. This is a very childlike movie. But for what it is, I think it's very enjoyable and very creative as well. It shows a different side of Tim Burton, a more childlike side of Tim Burton. But there are still a few scary moments, you know, Large March. You watch the movie, you know what Large March is. Pee-wee's Big Adventure is a 7.5 out of 10 from me. Okay, last one. Sweeney Todd. Sweeney Todd is a film about a demon barber. It's weird. Yeah, I think it's like every Tim Burton movie ever. It's not a very outstanding movie, but it's not a terrible movie either. But I won't really remember it out of all of Tim Burton's films. It just doesn't stand out as much. The music by Stephen Sondheim, I think, could have been a little bit better, especially compared to music like Into the Woods, also by Stephen Sondheim. And Johnny Depp is a capable singer, but I don't know if he could play a character in a musical film, because it takes a whole different level of both musical ability and emotional expression to be able to do something like that. And I don't really know if Johnny Depp is suitable for a role in a musical. It's still a fine movie, So I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. So those are all the Tim Burton films that I have seen. That's a lot.